stretched back to an open kitchen. The duplex had been built along the lines of a shotgun-style house. It was essentially a railroad apartment. The right side of the room was a hallway that stretched all the way to the back door, with rooms opening off it on the left. He'd never been inside this particular building, but he'd seen enough similar houses to assume the second half of the duplex would be a mirror image. Hallway on the left, rooms opening off to the right. Crime scene markers already littered the floor, and several members of the crime scene unit were at work, carefully moving around the body. Quinn noticed that one marker denoted the position of a beer can, another the contents of a spilled ashtray. A third indicated a curious splotch of blood. In the midst of everything, in a plump armchair with padded wooden arms and a pool of dried blood underneath it, was the reason for Quinn's presence. Dr. Ron Hubert, the medical examiner, was down on one knee in front of the chair, his black medical bag at his side, performing the preliminary work on the victim. The remnants of what had once been a man sagged against the cushions. His throat had, at the end of the killer's torture spree, been slit ear to ear. A gag created from a belt and what had probably been the man's own socks remained strapped around the mouth. A drapery cord bound his left wrist, while the right had been tied to the chair with a lamp cord. Both of the victim's arms had been burned, with lit cigarettes, Quinn thought. The man's face had been so bashed in, it wasn't possible to determine much about what he had looked like in life. He had been struck savagely, making it look like a rage killing. But a rage killing was usually personal. The addition of torture suggested that the killer was mentally deranged, someone who reveled in what he was doing, and had probably done it before. And torture wasn't carried out in a red haze of fury.
"Come around and stay close to the wall, Quinn,"
Detective Jake LaRue said. He was standing behind the couch, his ever-present notepad in hand, slowly looking around the room as the crime scene techs carefully went through it, and the ME examined the corpse. Quinn was surprised at LaRue's directive. The detective knew damned well that Quinn was aware he needed to avoid contaminating the scene. But this kind of scene unnerved everyone, even a jaded pro like LaRue. Most cops agreed that when crime scenes stopped bothering you, it was time to seek new work. Quinn looked at the walls as he walked around to LaRue's position. He noted a number of photographs of musicians on display. He thought he recognized some of the people in them, although he would have to take some time to remember just who they were.
"What the hell took you so long?"
LaRue asked. Quinn could have told him that he'd made it to the house in less than 10 minutes once LaRue had called him, but it wouldn't have meant anything at the moment. Frankly, after quickly scanning just the living area, he was wondering why he'd been called. The place was equipped with a large-screen television and a state-of-the-art sound system, so presumably the dead man had had money. There was drug paraphernalia on the coffee table to the side of the couch. A bag of what he presumed to be weed lay out in the open. Glancing toward the kitchen counter, he saw an impressive array of alcohol. People didn't tend to get stoned on grass and suddenly turn violent, but they were known to become killer-agitated after enough bourbon or absinthe. Was this the result of escalating tensions between associates in the drug trade? There was a wad of 20s lying on the table by the bag of weed, which, he saw on closer inspection, looked to have been tossed carelessly on top of a spill of white powder that he didn't think would prove to be baking soda or talc. Drug deal gone bad? Someone holding out on someone?
"Were you first on scene?"
Quinn asked, reaching LaRue's side. The detective stood still. Quinn knew he was taking in the room, everything about it. LaRue was a good-looking man with short-cropped hair. His face was a character study. The lines drawn into his features clearly portrayed the complexity of his work and the seriousness with which he faced it. He'd been a damned good partner when they'd worked together, and now that Quinn had been out of the force for several years and worked in the private sector as a PI, they got along just as well together when LaRue called him in as a consultant. Even when they'd been partners, LaRue had never really wanted to know how Quinn came up with his theories and conclusions. What he didn't know meant he couldn't question Quinn's credibility or his methods. LaRue gave him a questioning glance.
"First on the scene were 2 patrol officers. Since it was pretty evident this man was dead, most likely Lawrence Barrett, who's lived at this address